What's up, y'all? I am Cole Wright, your host of the Three Wiggle Golf Show, where we talk shop, always go for it in two, and never, ever three putt. First, thank y'all for being here and supporting the show. If this is your first time here, Mondays, we release a new episode. That is our weekly wrap. There, we talk about the previous week in professional golf, who won, who lost, who's trending, and then we give our expert picks as to who we think is going to find themselves in the winner's circle in the upcoming week. Also on the show, we'll have guests on a couple times a month to talk about their life, business, and love for the links. And then lastly, I just want to ask you guys, make sure you share the show, leave a review. That really helps us, grow the brand and grow the show. And it also gives us insight into, making sure we're putting out content that you guys are liking and wanting to see more of. So without further ado, we're going to get into this episode, which is a guest interview with one and only Corey Wootton.
What's up, Cole?
Nothing, man. How you doing?
Good, man. I see you got this Packers gear on, and I don't know if you did this because of my background in the Bears and, that rivalry right there. But, I'm sorry for everyone tuning in. I got to leave right now. I'm just kidding. I smelled some cheese tonight. I did.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Corey, how you living, man? You good?
Man, I'm doing good, man. Trying to stay warm out here. Out here in Missouri, it's been super cold. It was like -4 the other day. I told you before we got on this, I was at our sales conference in San Diego golfing, and 68, 69 degrees, sunny weather, California, and then came back, got my bags from St. Louis Lambert, and I got smacked in the face when I went outside, baggage claim. It was terrible.
Yeah. I was out in Phoenix last week for work, actually, and same deal, man. It was sunny and 75, and same deal, flew back into Lambert, and I'm like, man, I've had enough of this,
Exactly. I see why all the pro golfers, they usually live in either Arizona or like Jupiter, Florida somewhere. It kind of makes sense, right?
For sure. Well, Corey, man, I cannot thank you enough for coming on to the show and supporting Three Wiggle and taking the time out of your busy life, man. I know you got a lot of things pulling you different directions. Obviously, you got a family and little ones, and so I would just want to say thanks. Before we get too much into the details of the podcast, I want to give people some insight into you and I's relationship and how this kind of started, because you and I have known each other for 6-7 years now. So I was at a golf course on the driving range in middle of St. Louis, Corey Crystal Springs, and I'm hitting balls, and I'm just doing my thing, focused, and then out of nowhere, I hear this guy pounding a golf ball right behind me. So I turn around and I'm like, who the fuck is this big ass guy wearing a basketball jersey and just piping driver like 330, 350 down this range? And so I didn't even think twice about it. I introduced myself to you and I said, hey man, what's the deal? I was like, did you play in the NBA? Were you in the league? Like what's what? And you were really humble, but kind, and gave me some of your time then as well. And said, yeah, I played in the league for 6 years with the Bears. And at that point in time, I said, man, we may just stop this right now because I'm a Packers fan. Does that ring true to you?
Yeah, I remember that. So the first time we met, you were still in college at the time, right?
Correct.
At Missouri Baptist.
Yes, sir.
And you were on the golf team, and we were talking a little bit about that. And you were asking about, how I was like, I just got into golf. I was literally like a couple months into it. And at that time, all I could do was hit driver, and I hit driver pretty straight. Everything else, I couldn't do anything. No short game, no iron game, no wedge game, no putting. I was Happy Gilmore at that point. Yeah. So we were working a little bit, and I remember you were showing me, like, because there was a couple I was like blocking out or slicing a little bit, and you were talking about the wrist, keeping that flat or a little bit more bowed, and I kind of got into there. And then, fast forward, 6 years later, and just as crazy about golf, if not more. But I love the game, and I think most people, as you get older, that you have a family of kids, golf is like the common connector with people, because like you're like, oh, like, honey, I'm gonna go to a bar. You're like, what? No, I'm gonna go to a golf course. If you want to have a couple of drinks on the course, hang out with your friends, play for a little money, it's handicapped, so me and you could play. You're giving me strokes, and it makes it interesting. So that's what I love about golf. Is like, it's a level playing field, especially with the handicap, and it just allows people to connect. And I think in the business world, I've done a lot of connections and a lot of deals through the sport of golf.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great medium, just like you said, for business. And the best part about it is, you can play it your whole life. And so, like you said, creates relationships and the work. So Yeah, man. Well, it's been cool. I can't wait for me and you to get out there this summer. We'll film just so you guys know
I
we're
need
not
more
going to play
strokes. All right,
together.
strokes,
I,
strokes, and more.
I, I'll give you some strokes. Yeah, we'll get that sorted out. Um, Corey, tell me about yourself, man. So you grew up in New Jersey, correct? And then you went to Northwestern for your college career, and then obviously you're already in Chicago, and then fortunately got drafted by the Bears. Talk to me about that, man. What
Yeah.
was that journey like?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I went to a football powerhouse, Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey. We had a bunch of Army All-Americans. We had a bunch of NFL guys in our division. We had, I think, 10 or 11 D1 guys my senior year of high school. So
Wow.
we were a stacked team. We had every college coach and their mother come into our school. You know, we had a scale. We had they measure our height, our weight, and just to see for the recruiting. So there was a lot of coaches through there. And I was kind of like an afterthought, right? We had a lot of really talented people. Luckily, my coach believed in me. I played pretty well, but he was like, hey, this guy, I'm telling you, he's going to be the best one out of all of them. And they kind of took his word, and I was able to get like 10 scholarships after my junior year, where I thought I was kind of going to have to go to like a 5th-year prep school just because I was undersized. So end up playing through there. I get recruited by a bunch of schools, and then Northwestern was actually my last offer. I got offered my senior year in like November. And, I kind of did some research on it. I knew there was a couple guys from New Jersey. John Pickens was one of them. He's from Franklin Lakes, not too far from where I went to high school. And Luis Castillo, was from Garfield. So I did some more research, really good academic school. And it kind of came down to them in Boston College. So I knew a lot of people on the East Coast that, went to Boston College, took a visit to Northwestern, really loved the guys there, loved the people on the incoming class, the coaches, loved Chicago. And I was like, shoot, this is my spot. When you kind of just click with a bunch of people, you know. And, I committed after that and ended up at Northwestern. And, it was a heck of a ride. I started my first couple of games, had a medical injury. I had a bad stinger, and then just kept getting better every year, kept chipping away. And, my junior year, I was projected as a first-round pick. I tore my ACL in the bowl game against Mizzou. Chase Daniel, Jeremy Macklin had a monster game, had 2 sacks, a pick, was going for my third, and tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus, and last 2 minutes of the game. So talk about a, wake-up call. You're like, oh, shoot, I'm about to leave for the draft. And that happens. You come back. You're not the same. You're going through, the mental aspect of things, like not trusting your knee, not trusting yourself, and just having to fight and battle through that. So that first year back was tough. And then ended up getting drafted to the Bears in the 4th round. So it was a blessing, man. I got drafted by Lovie Smith, got to play for arguably one of the greatest defenses in NFL history, especially in 2012 when I was a starter. We were top 5. Played with Julius Peppers, who's a Hall of Famer, Devin Hester, Brian Urlacher, all these guys. The list goes on and on. So, man, I had a blast. Ended up playing 6 years, 4 with the Bears, 1 with the Vikings, 1 with the Lions. After I had my oldest daughter, I saw that movie Concussion, and I was like, you know what? I'm good, So my goal was 6 to 8 years. I got out, and I enjoy it. People ask, do I miss it? No. I mean, I really enjoyed my time, but I really enjoy life now more. I think for me, football was something that I enjoyed, but it wasn't my end all be all. And I think for some people, it's all they have. And I always knew I was more than that. So I was excited for my life after that. So I set up a bunch of businesses. I own a real estate company, I own a golf simulator, and now I work in med device sales for Stryker, like we talked about, and I love it. I think any athlete, Stryker hires 90% athletes just because the work ethic, persevering through adversity. There's so many different things that you learn from being an athlete that it translates into the real world. I'm sure you can talk about that as well. I think athletes, the things we go through mentally, physically, the grind, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, man, that's so cool that you were able to being able to be a professional athlete is just such a small amount of people, you know what I mean? So the fact that you're able to have that experience is incredible. You basically just your entire career was in the NFC North,
with the exception of that team that you have on right now.
I know, and I'm like, man, why couldn't you just one more year, just called up McCarthy, at the time, and
Yeah,
kind of were there. But
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I had offers actually the year I retired to play. One of them was my hometown team, the Jets, right down the
yeah,
street from where I grew up. And I was just you get so done with something, and for me, I was all in or nothing at all. And I knew the fact that I wasn't all in on it. I was like, you can't be a professional athlete and be half in. It just doesn't work
definitely
like
not.
that, right? You're gonna get
Yeah,
injured, something's gonna happen, and I just think it's a disrespect to the game or whatever sport you're at, right? If you're not giving
yeah,
your all, there's a million people waiting to be in your shoes. So for me, I knew, when I wasn't 100% all into it in the off season, I was like, yeah, it's time.
yeah. No, I get that. I get that absolutely. Talk to me about your 2010 rookie season. Bears make it to the NFC Championship. I'm not trying to pour salt in the wound. They lose to the good guys, but obviously, it is what it is. That was an incredible season for the Bears. I think best season they had outside of the playoff run since 2018. 2018 was a really good season for the
Yeah.
Bears too. But what was that like going into the NFL, not knowing what to expect? You're playing
Yeah.
with the big dogs, and you guys make a run.
Oh, it was incredible. That year, especially the rookie year, you're making a run down the stretch. We go to the playoffs, we end up making a bye the first week. Then the next week we play Seattle. Matt Hasselback's the quarterback. Pete Carroll's the coach. We end up beating them. And then we're NFC Championship against our rival, Green Bay. We're like, oh, we got this. We played them tough throughout the year. And the problem was, anytime Green Bay has a chance you have a chance to keep them out of the playoffs, because week 16 or week 17 at the time, Green Bay needed to win against us to go in the playoffs, right? We already clinched the first round bye, so we played the starters in the first half, and we're like, game's close, but we're like, oh, we're just going to rest everybody, no worries at all. Ended up letting Green Bay in that game. Then they go on that tear. They beat the Giants, who were looking like a Super Bowl contender as well. And then they end up beating us. But that was a tough game because Jay Cutler, that's the game he hurt his knee. And there's all that controversy with that, saying he should have played, he shouldn't have played. So I think maybe if he stayed in the whole game, maybe it'd be a different story, but we can't go back in time. But I just remember that game was electric. Like the
Yeah.
atmosphere leading up to it, the stadium was rocking. I was thinking, man, we're one game away from making the Super Bowl. And I truly felt if we beat Green Bay, that we would have beat the Steelers too. I felt like we matched up well. So I was like, man, in my first year, we're about to win the Super Bowl. And then Aaron Rodgers, more so BJ Raji, with that
BJ
pick
Raji,
six.
he had the pick six.
And
Yeah.
then he did the hula because he made the Pro Bowl. And he's actually from my neck of the woods in New Jersey. So we
Really?
trained
Okay.
with each other one off season. So I've known him for a while. Really good dude. He's from Westwood, New Jersey. But yeah, another talented guy. Coming from that area. But
And he didn't play very long in the league either.
no, so he played I think 7 years. So
Yeah.
he had a couple injuries, and I think he was just done. I think
Yeah.
he turned down a big contract, was trying to get more money, and then ended up hurting his bicep. Played like another year or so, and then ended up retiring. So I think most guys realize that, hey, you make a bunch of money, you save it, you invest it, and then move on to your next phase, because now they're doing all the studies with the brain. So Harvard and the former wrestler Chris Nowitzki, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but he's kind of backing that whole Harvard brain study, which I think is a good thing because they're understanding more about different players and impacts, and people are donating their brain, post-mortem, which I think is going to be a great thing. So they're trying to make the game safer, but at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's football, right? It's a tough physical
Yeah.
game, and I think ultimately, like growing up, we didn't really know the long-term effects. You're like, oh, if you get knocked out cold, yeah, that happens a bunch of times. It's going to be some issues, but they didn't realize like the constant hits, right? Especially
Yeah.
as a defensive lineman or any other position, you always have those little constant hits. So I think as time goes on, they're going to realize more about it. But for me, I just didn't want to take that risk anymore. And I think a lot of people are doing the same. Like people are retiring before 30 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, talk to me about the current state of the Bears, man. Obviously, the last 5, 6 years have been tough. Well, my best friend is from Woodstock, Illinois. If you know where that's
Yeah.
at, it's up northwest of Chicago. And he's an avid Bears fan, and so obviously I'm jabbing him all the time about it. But I'm also from the KC area, and so I grew up in a time where Kansas City was not the Kansas City that everybody knows today. It was
Yeah. It's tough.
tumultuous times. You know what I mean? For a
Exactly.
long time.
Yeah.
And so, what are your thoughts, man? What's the current state of the Bears? What do they got to do to get some winning season playoff bursts moving in the right direction?
Well, I think they finally got a head coach that's an offensive-minded coach, Ben Johnson, coming from Detroit. I think what he did for Jared Goff and that Detroit offense is incredible, because Jared Goff is somebody that Sean McVay, arguably one of the greatest coaches right now, didn't feel comfortable with him. They didn't feel like Jared Goff could win them the championship. And I think in Detroit, what Ben Johnson has done with him is transformed him from, an above average quarterback to on the elite level. He was arguably playing some of the best football. Obviously, that playoff game didn't play the best, but I think it's tough sometimes when you have a bye week, just the rhythm and consistency. It wasn't his best game, but I think he had him playing well. And then I look at somebody like Caleb Williams, has all the talent in the world. We see when he can do it, he looks like one of the best. But obviously he's a young guy. He has to break some of his bad habits. But I think the one great thing that Ben Johnson did with Jared Goff, that internal clock. A lot of quarterbacks don't have that, right? Especially when they're younger. They hold the ball too long. They take sacks. And, I think that's something he's going to improve on. And just the creativity, the ability to mix and match the run and pass and keep that defense all balanced. Because when you looked at Detroit, Jared Goff, a couple of games, he was 19 of 19, 21 of 23 to start out a game. And you're like, man, that's impressive. And I think that's credit to Ben Johnson and just his coaching 100%. Style. So I think the Bears finally went the offensive route. And I know they went with Matt Nagy years ago. Yeah. But I think about it, I wasn't that impressed.
And he's in Kansas City now, right?
Correct. He's back there. Yeah. But they were saying they're giving him credit for being the offensive coordinator. And that's Andy Reid's show. Andy Reid's calling the plays, right? You see on TV, he has the play sheet. So Matt Nagy, yes, his title was offensive coordinator, just like Bieniemy. I think these guys get too much credit, when Andy Reid was calling the shots. So I'm excited for the direction. Obviously, they have to build in the trenches. That's the key. But I was talking in a podcast about how the Bears need to be more like Green Bay, and as much as that pains me to say,
what do you mean by that, Corey?
So from the top down, right? From the management, the leadership, all the way down, right? From the way they make decisions to the way they draft and develop talent, right? And that comes down to the GM, all these player personnel guys, the scouts, right? Think of scouting these guys, making sure you have the right fits. And then the coaches getting the best out of these players. And I think that's something Green Bay has done well. Think about it. Their past three quarterbacks have all been studs, right? Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Love. And the last two, they kind of had that quarterback and waiting system. So they got to learn behind two really great quarterbacks. So I've loved the way they've done things. I think especially the guys they draft, right? They draft guys and then they end up making Pro Bowls and signing second and third deals. That's something the Bears haven't done that much, with the exception of defensive players.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. What do you think the Bears need to do in the draft this year to make some moves? Because obviously Caleb Williams, like you said, man, he's an all-star talent for sure, but it's a tall ask for any rookie quarterback. I mean, Jay Daniels has just been exceptional this year, but Caleb Williams is cut from that same cloth, in my opinion, but I maybe don't feel like he was put into the best situation to excel.
Correct. Yeah, and I look at Jaden Daniels that you mentioned, and obviously he has a way better offensive line than the Bears. So if I'm looking at the Bears, right, obviously they have DJ Moore, who's a dynamic playmaker, Rome Odunze, they have Cole Kmet, that's a really solid tight end, Swift at running back. They'll probably add another receiver maybe in free agency, but I look at their offensive line. That's the real weak spot of it. Caleb Williams was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in NFL history his rookie year. I think David Carr was the highest. And I think there's a correlation between, how well you play and how great your offensive line is. There definitely is. And that's why I see Jaden Daniels doing such a great job. Obviously, you can't take anything away from his talent. He looks very cool, calm, and collective. But Cliff Kingsbury has done a great job game planning, and that offensive line has been playing well. So
you got to have time.
Correct. So in this draft and free agency, they really have to build the trenches, right? They drafted a right tackle the year before, Darnell Wright. Braxton Jones is a guy that's coming up on his fourth year. He had a very serious injury this past year, so I don't know how he's going to be for this year. But I think they need to get a left tackle, and they got to build the guard positions, and they need a center. So they have a lot of needs in the trenches. The past couple of years, they've really added to the wide receiver. They got Keenan Allen, they got DJ Moore, they got Rome Odunze. But you can't forget about the offensive line. I think that's arguably one of the most important things if you're building a franchise around a young quarterback.
Yeah. And the other side of the ball too, man, right? I mean, their run defense wasn't great this year. Their defense was on the lower half of the league, if I checked correctly. And so, like you said, they got to make moves on both sides of the ball. But like you said, they're from a skill position standpoint, they've got what it takes to score points and and get wins.
Exactly. Like I look at their receivers, their running backs, their tight ends, and then their defensive backs. Those are the strength of the team. But the trenches are kind of the weak spot. They got Montez Sweat, who came from the Commanders, who had a really good year last year. This year he kind of struggled, but he's not the featured defensive end. He's a left end that'll give you 7 to 9, play the run really well, but he's not going to be that guy to get you 12 to 16 sacks a year, and that's something they need. I'm eyeing a guy from Penn State, Abdul Carter, that in my opinion, I think he's Micah Parsons 2.0. And I think the Bears would be smart to get him, just because I think there's so much flexibility with what he can do.
Saying a lot.
Right, he could put his hand in the dirt. He could stand up. It's hard to find pass rushers in this league. Offensive linemen, left tackles, right tackles, and pass rushers are so hard to find, right? You can find guys that can play the run on the street, but pass rush is an art, and I think they really need to, develop and get some of those guys going.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I hope that I don't ever want to see teams do poorly for extended period of times, and I definitely don't want to see the Packers suck, but
it's okay. They can.
Right. The NFC North, I think, was by record the best division in football this year. Correct? Am I wrong on that?
Exactly. And the odd man out was the Bears.
The Bears, right? Yep. So we'll see, man. Hopefully they can make it competitive. I know they're tired of losing to Green Bay. It seems like it's been a millennia since they flipped the W.
We finally did it last game. That was our Super Bowl, right? We snapped that 11-game losing streak. You got to change things, because when someone beats you that bad, and Aaron Rodgers, I feel like he was not disrespectful when we played, because it was actually competitive, but towards the end of his career there, he was being very disrespectful to the Bears. I own you, all this. I was like, when Urlacher and Briggs and all these guys were here.
That's right. Right. Oh my gosh, man. Well, cool. We'll see how the Bears do next season, see if they can make some good decisions and, turn things around. But like I said, I think Ben Johnson is the start of it all. He's obviously been great in Detroit, so we'll see what's up. Championship weekend's coming up, man. Talk to me about that. Who do you like? What do you think?
Yeah, obviously it's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes, right? Even though he hasn't had the best year statistically and how the game looks, it seems like every time the fourth quarter is there, he finds a way to put them for the game-winning score and lead them on that drive. Josh Allen is having one of his record-breaking years. He looks incredible, MVP caliber. You can make an argument, him or Lamar all day. Josh Allen has beat Patrick Mahomes almost every regular season, but in the playoffs, he hasn't been able to get it done. So is this the year? And when you talk about legacy for Josh Allen, this is a legacy game, right? Everyone knows what Patrick Mahomes has done. He's won 3 Super Bowls, so if he loses this game, it's not a big deal at all, right? He lost to Joe Burrow in that one AFC championship. But I think for Josh Allen, this is such a critical game for his legacy as a quarterback, right? Are you going to be like the Bills used to be, where you go to a Super Bowl and you lose 4 times in a row? No. Can he get over the hump? Can he take them all the way? And can he beat arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time, right? If Patrick Mahomes continues winning, we'll talk about the conversation, him or Tom Brady. But I think to get in that conversation as one of the great quarterbacks in this league, I think Josh Allen has to beat Patrick Mahomes in this game. So it's gonna. I got my money on Patrick Mahomes. It's hard to bet on him and Andy Reid, bet against them rather, just because they find a way to get it done, and coaching matters. If Josh Allen can do that, man, hats off to him. I think he'll win the MVP this year, but it'd be huge for the Bills. Like, obviously, I root for them if they could win, but for me, it's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. And then on the other side, I'm looking at the Eagles and Commanders. For me, I think Dan Quinn has that defense fired up and ready to play. And I look at what Philly does well, right? Saquon Barkley is an absolute beast, but I think Dan Quinn is going to find a way to try to negate that running game. And, Jalen Hurts has not played that well this year. He's been battling injuries. He hasn't stretched the ball down the field. and I look at his past couple games. I know the last game was a snow fest, so I take that with a grain of salt, but he has not been airing the ball out well. So I look for this one, the Commanders, to win it, and I think it's going to be a Commanders versus Chiefs in the Super Bowl, unless Josh Allen really has
Can do something special.
Correct. So what about you?
Man, I'm in the same boat. I can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. When you see greatness like that, his ability to last year he displayed that he can go on the road through the playoffs and get it done. Yep. He's displayed in previous years that he can come from behind in tight moments. And last but not least, if that guy has a chance with a minute left on the clock and it's a one-score game, you better bet your ass that the guy's he's the guy that has to have the ball in his hands, injured or not.
Yep.
And so I'm the same boat. I actually picked the Eagles to win it all, though. I think week 12 or 13.
Okay. Still sticking with it?
What's up?
You still sticking with the Eagles? Fly, Eagles, fly, or what?
Well, no, because I'm concerned about Jalen now at this point. Yeah. I mean, he had that little knee injury or whatever they're saying. Have you heard anything about that?
No, so I think they're saying he's close to 100%, but I guess we'll see when the game happens. But I think his ability to move outside the pocket is a game changer for some of those zone reads, those RPOs is really an advantage, and it'll be interesting to see how they do that. And like I said, on the other side of the ball, I think Dan Quinn is one of the best defensive coordinators, defensive minds in the game, and I think he's gonna have a great game plan for what they do well. He's really gonna try to knock out that run. And I know Philly has some playmakers, but I think ultimately I'm just not trusting Jalen Hurts with the ball right now, especially airing it out down the field.
Yeah. Now, I'm excited. I'm really excited for this playoffs. The Commanders being in this position, I don't even know how long it's been since they've been to an NFC championship.
I think they were saying since the 80s, I want to say.
Yeah, so this is just huge for that franchise, and I would love nothing more than to see a rookie quarterback make it to the make the big game. And then better than anything is take down,
one of the goals.
Your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like that would be a cool story. That would be a cool story.
Exactly. Yeah, looking forward to it. So, yeah, it's crazy to think like in a couple more weeks football will be over, and then you're kind of back to like, oh, okay, off season, free agency, the draft, the whole bit.
Yeah.
So, but football is king in this country. Obviously. Baseball is America's pastime. Basketball is a great sport.
I think that's gone.
There's no sport like football. There's
no
that's America's sport, right? It's religion here, whether you like football or don't. Everyone's having a party every weekend. You're either going to somebody's house, going to a bar, going to the game, you're watching it. It's life, and I think everybody embraces it.
Taylor Swift kind of proved that, man, because she brought an entire group of people that don't even know what football is to watch it, and then they're kind of like, oh, this is pretty badass. Like, this is cool,
Exactly. So I think there's no sport like that because there's only 17 games. Every game matters, so it's not like in baseball or basketball where guys are sitting out a bunch. Every game matters. You need all hands on deck to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Corey, let's get into your broadcasting career, man. You do, like I said previously, you do a lot of different things. Your real estate side hustle, obviously with Stryker, and then you do broadcasting on the side, I guess. But is that just for football, or do you cover multiple sports out of Chicago, or what's the deal?
So I cover NFL. I cover the Bears. I work for a network, CHGO. So we did the show this year with Lance Briggs, a former linebacker that I played with. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And we're one of the top football podcasts out there. So it's been awesome. I used to work for Fox 32, Big Ten Network, and then with CHGO we do another show called All Big Ten, where we talk about Big Ten football. So
I've seen some clips of that recently. On your profile.
So it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I've always wanted to be around sports, but not getting beat up nowadays. But still get to talk about them. Yeah.
For sure. Did you when you were in college? Did you get your degree in broadcasting or
communications? And I took a couple classes and I thought about it, because I've always been interested in being in front of the camera and doing things like that, and got the opportunity where I retired when I first worked for Big Ten Network. Worked alongside Braylon Edwards, arguably one of the greatest wide receivers in the history of college football. Went on to have a great NFL career, but we did a show starting out for the Big Ten together. And ever since then, I was hooked. And, the more I could talk about sports and connect. And I think when you look at this country, college football, NFL football, that's what people love, right?
Yeah.
It is religion.
College football is as much of
Oh,
a frenzy as the NFL is.
correct. It's even more, to an
Yeah.
extent, because the tailgating, just the atmosphere of this, it's
Yeah.
it's a different beast. So I love talking about sports and football, and since then I've loved talking about golf as well, and that's why I'm excited. We'll get into golf a little bit, but it's been a lot of fun. Still being involved in football.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Do you ever see yourself transitioning out of Chicago, or is because Chicago has become home so much to you in a lot of ways that, you're content just settling there, from a broadcasting sports covering standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to whatever opportunity. I've done some stuff with NFL Network and LA
Yeah.
and Good Morning Football back when they had it in New York. So I'm open to whatever opportunity. Obviously, my goal is to eventually cover games, college
Yeah.
football games, NFL games. I did a couple Bears preseason games, which was awesome. But would love to do that on a more regular basis, especially on the weekends, because I do enjoy the sales job, and I love the aspects of that. So would still love to be able to do both, and I think the weekend makes it flexible.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, I hope something big comes, through the woodworks for you. I'd love nothing more to see you on TV, covering games or doing
Yeah, it'd be
something
fun, man. So
big
hopefully,
time, big time,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll kind of segue into your real estate side hustle, man.
Yep.
You told me about that a little bit a long time ago.
Yep.
So obviously you have your West End Golf Club. I don't know if that's just a lease or if you own that building, but is your real estate primarily residential, commercial?
Yeah.
How many doors do you have? Has
Yep.
that always been a hobby? Talk to me
Yep.
about that.
So for me, I've always done residential properties. So when I first retired, I was watching that movie, or watching that show rather, Flip or Flop on HGTV, and I was just kind of looking at, they buy this, house that needs some fixing up, and they would go through the process, they buy it low, put a bunch of work into it, sell it high, and I'm like, that seems pretty interesting. So I started doing some research on it. I started researching the area out here in St. Louis, and affordability, especially back in 2016, like you could buy a house in North County, $40,000-$50,000, put 30 to 40 into it, sell it for 120, 130 all day. So,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of opportunities like that. So I just kind of, started researching stuff on Reddit, on different forums, and like watching YouTube videos. And I kind of, was just taking notes and kind of self-taught myself. And I was like, I found a realtor that had a background in flipping houses back when he was in California. So he came over here, and we met, and he's a big football fan. So we hit it off, and I was telling him kind of what I wanted to do. And he's like, okay, cool. So he would look at all the properties with us and say, hey, he'd walk it through us and say, this is how much it needs. This is how much we could sell it for. Here's the unknowns. Even after the unknowns, you still come home with 40, 50K. And so we kind of just followed that recipe and, flip 12 plus homes. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh, that's good. And then one of our carpet guys, this guy, John Bauer, that lives out in Florissant, he told me, he's like, I've never kind of done the flips. I've always done the rentals. And I was like, rentals? Like, you like being a landlord? And he's like, yeah, I actually like it. And I was like, really? Like, tenants don't to give you a hard time or mess up your property? He's like, no, man, I do Section 8. And I was like, Section 8? I've heard, hit or miss about that. He's like, no, man, it's one of the best things going. He's like, I've had the same tenants for 10 plus years. They upkeep the property. They're super appreciative. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me talk to me more about this. And he's like, there's a website you can look at and see what the market rents are. And I was looking at it, and I was like, wow, you can get that much for rent. It's the same as, if you were to get a regular renter. And he's like, the great part about it is, a tenant will pay a portion, or sometimes they pay nothing. And he's like, if they do pay a portion, and let's say they do lose their job, Section 8 will pay 100%. And I was like, oh, this is foolproof. So
No brainer.
yeah, 2019, we bought 10 of them and did all Section 8. And I've had 8 of the same tenants, a couple, two others have changed. And I have had one regular renter, and that was my worst tenant by far. I tell you,
Really?
like, so the Section 8 tenants have been awesome. Like, they've been, like he said, super appreciative, take care of the property, because I think they value it, right? They want a nice, safe place for their kids. And, it's a win-win, the Section 8's paying me. I'm providing them a great house. I upkeep it. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. And during the pandemic, think about it, I bought these in 2019. If I would have done regular renters, I would have got smacked. Like, there people weren't paying rent. There was nothing you could do. You couldn't evict people. So I think when you're investing, especially in single family homes, I think Section 8 is a really great option just for that guaranteed rent. You get that protection. Just God forbid there's another pandemic like that, and people lose jobs, and
they're built-in insurance policy
correct.
for
So I've always really focused on that, and obviously the market since the pandemic has gotten crazy. So for me, it doesn't make sense to buy more unless I got a great deal. But that's kind of always like I've kind of steered away from the commercial properties because I've always thought at the end of the day with single families. So let's say I wanted to sell them right now. I could sell them. I could make a really great profit. And the great thing about it is I could sell it to somebody that's looking to live there with a family, or I could sell it to an investor. So there's so many different avenues, you could sell it. With a commercial property, you're only looking at an investor. So I think there's so much flexibility, the fact that if you buy in the right area, appreciation for residential is like an average of 3% a year over time. So I think, buy and hold, you keep them for, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, appreciation is going to get there. Your tenant is paying down the note. And eventually when you have them all paid off, all of a sudden, when it's time to retire, you can buy that place in Florida or Arizona by the golf course.
Real easy. Yeah, man, it sounds like the guy who helped you at the start of this helped you avoid a lot of potential mistakes and hit the ground running in the right direction fast.
Yeah, I think with anything you're getting into, you just need somebody to be a mentor for you, because I think everybody, especially men, not to be stereotypical, but they think they can figure everything out. But you just got to ask questions. If you haven't done something before, you got to ask for somebody that has experience, because they went through the ups and downs. And if you could avoid some of those, right, some of those learning curves, it's a great thing. So that's how I've always been, never been afraid to ask questions in anything I'm doing, whether it's the real estate, the golf business. The guys from Gimme Golf out here, I've asked them tons of questions. Kenny and Kyle over there, they've helped me out with our business in New Jersey, the West End Golf Club. So I think there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I think people just need to normalize, like, asking for help. Like, hey, man, you mind if we grab a coffee? Let me pick your brain a little bit, because I think more people are willing to help you than you would think.
Yeah. Are you looking to continually expand more doors?
Yeah.
And just keep going? And then is Section 8 now, because it seems so foolproof, kind of a focus for you?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been my main focus. Like, I used to be really into the flips. And then I realized, like, after one flip where I lost $5,000, like, it wasn't the end of the world, but I was just kind of like, okay, I did all this work to lose money, potentially. So then I was like, okay, looking up, talking to different people that have been really successful in real estate. And the common theme was rental properties. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, you get the cash flow, you get the appreciation, and then it's going to be paid off over time, especially if you keep it. So, you buy a property. I bought most of these for 80 to 100,000. Think about 20, 30 years from now, those same 80 to 100 will be 250, 300, right? Over time, times 10, we're talking about some significant money. So I think that's how you build the wealth. Obviously, flips can give you that quick money, but life is a marathon, I believe. It's not a sprint.
For sure.
So yes, I believe both have benefits, right? To be able to do both. But for me, I really lean on the rental properties. I think it's something that you don't have to worry about. Obviously you get a maintenance person, you get somebody to fix it up, but it's something like, hey, you just don't worry about that for a while as far as the money. And then all of a sudden you look up 10, 20, 15 years, you always borrow against it. If you need money, you want to invest in something else. So there's so much flexibility, with those properties.
Yeah. You mentioned, Gimme Golf Club. So Kyle, I've talked to him. I met him when I was at Whitmore for a year, and he's actually going to come on the podcast. I'm going to go to Gimme and set up there and just help kind of promote his thing from a broader scale, if you will. But what I wanted to ask, because I was looking at, the West End online, the social, so it looks like some of the aspects from the interiorly resemble that of Gimme. Was that inspiration from Kyle? And did you pull from him and do that intentionally, or was it just coincidence? What happened?
Yeah, I think we kind of went with more of a blacked out theme, especially for the bays, just
Yeah.
because for the space, I think it really popped. I think with theirs, what we looked at was just the community. I think that's the main aspect we wanted to draw inspiration from, because I love the community. I'm a member there. I'm a member at Whitmore.
Right.
I'm a member at
Right.
Gimme Golf Club, especially for the winter when you're working on your game. But I love the community. When you go in there, you talk to Kenny, you talk to Kyle, you talk to all the Cody, all the guys that are there all the time, and it's just a nice golf community. So I love
Yeah.
that aspect of that, and that's what we're trying to build in New Jersey. And we have a tight knit community there, and we've been able to build it. Obviously, Gimme is a powerhouse, man. They've been around for 4 years. I love what they've done. They expanded to a second location. Maybe talks about a third one. It's been really impressive to see what they built. And I talked to Kyle about it, and I'm sure he'll talk to you about it. He's just like, man, I didn't do any marketing. I didn't do any advertising. We just spread word of mouth. And, we just tried to build a community that people felt great about. And I think that's so commendable what he's been able to do. And him and Kenny and all the rest of the guys that are responsible for that, it's been awesome to see their growth. And I really enjoy, getting to know them and building relationships with them.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that. I went in there, I don't know, 6 months to a year ago, and I was telling him, I was like, Kyle, you did this so perfectly because you built a community before you even got the brick and mortar going. Because I don't know if you do this over in Jersey, but he created that like membership that allows Gimme members to go play all of these public courses in the
Correct.
St. Louis, Illinois
Yeah.
metro area. And then he created this home for everybody to come to and do the leagues and do the simulators, all this good stuff, man. It's incredible. And so it's really cool to see. It's really cool to see. So in Jersey, you just got some of your boys just running it over there?
Yeah, so my childhood friend, one of my best friends, Brian Maselli, and then our other friend Adam Gross, we thought of the idea. I was like telling them what Gimme had going on here and how indoor golf is huge, and I think it would be awesome to build a community. There's not much like that in Jersey, because New Jersey is a lot different than here, right? You're kind of landlocked, right? There's not a lot of golf courses. There's not a lot of outdoor ranges. So to go to a range, you got to fight traffic going 20, 30, 40 minutes one way, and there's no grass hitting areas. You're on a mat. So I figured, shoot, why not start this, especially how big indoor golf is getting. I was like, let's start a little community here. And the feedback has been awesome. Our leagues are awesome. We do skins nights. We do networking. We did NFLPA events for the former NFL players. We've done 3 of those. We do a big Masters party, building a really great community. So I think in New Jersey, it makes sense because obviously it's cold. The lack of course, it's really hard to find tee times out there. So I figure if you can't get out there on the actual course, why not come in there? Because for me, I don't know if you feel the same way. If I'm going to somewhere to hit at, on a mat, for me, I'm like, it doesn't matter for me if it's inside or outside on a mat, right? But if the grass area is open, I'm going outside all day. I think everybody
10 out of
prefer
10.
that, right? You take a divot, you get to have the tee height the way you want to. You get to work on your things. Hey, we got a bad lie here. We could work on some stuff. We could fluff it up just to see how balls react. So for me, if it's a mat, it doesn't matter for me if it's inside or outside. But grass is king, and there's not much of that in New Jersey.
Sure. With it being such a great opportunity because of the lack of golf courses and driving ranges, are you looking for a second location? I guess I didn't ask you, how long have you had West End open?
Yeah, so we've been open. It will be 2 years this upcoming May. So so a little over a year and a half, and it's been awesome to see the feedback, and we have been approached by people to franchise, so we're kind of weighing our options and seeing.
Good sign.
Yeah, so it's a good sign, and we're looking at potentially expanding. The thing is, in New Jersey, it's very tough to get a liquor license, which in Missouri, it's the opposite. It's very easy. You can get a liquor license here for like $100. In New Jersey, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, they limit how many you can have, especially in the town I grew up in, just because they didn't want to make it like an alcohol crazy town or anything like that. So they limit. You can do BYOB, but you cannot serve alcohol unless you want to put in for a liquor license, which I think they're going for 200,000. So it's a lot different over here, which is awesome. I think business wise, New Jersey is a different beast. You're closer to New York City. and
Yeah,
they want
right,
that
right.
money. So
Yeah. So are we looking at second locations, third
yeah,
locations? What's
so
the story there?
we've been looking, just the right opportunity for me and our business partners. We don't like to rush into something. We like do our research and just make sure we're fully informed. You know, we'd love to go out to eventually a bigger facility and get like a sand area, work on a bunker, maybe like an indoor chipping and putting area,
Yeah.
to really work on the game. Because I think if we could do that, I think that would separate us from the other facilities out there. And I don't know if you ever heard of Doug Baldwin that played in the NFL. He has a facility in Seattle that's unbelievable, similar to that, where they have a bunker area, they have a
Short
chipping.
game area.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome to see his spot. So if you get a chance, check it out. You could probably YouTube it or look on
Yeah.
Instagram. But I think
What was
that's
it? What was
something.
his name?
Doug Baldwin.
Doug Baldwin. Okay.
Yeah, he's a wide receiver for the Seahawks. Won a couple Super Bowls with him.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna check him out for
yeah,
sure. But
so
man, that is so cool.
yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, and I think the thing that people don't realize is like with any business or any new venture, right? There's a lot of growing pains, and you think you map everything out and you think it's going to go extremely perfect, but that's not the case. It's like anything in life, right?
Mike Tyson said it best,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah,
Everybody's got a plan until they get
yeah,
hit in the face. You know what I mean?
exactly,
That's
exactly.
every facet of life.
Yeah. So I think the first year was a great year, but we learned so much from it, like what we can improve on, what we can do better, how we can do better profit wise, what we can offer with some different things like regripping, club work, partnering up with other different companies out there and things like that. So I'm excited for this next year because our business partner, Brian Maselli, he's been building a lot of great relationships with different influencers and golf apparel companies. And, we're starting to build relationships with some of the big club companies. So who knows what may be in the works. So we're trying to really build this thing. And yeah, like hats off to Gimme. I love what they've done, and they've been nothing but an awesome community here in St. Louis. And we're definitely trying to model something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, best of luck, Corey, man. I hope that you get everything out of that. You know that you guys are wanting to, but more than anything, the community, like you said. I mean, that's the foundation of it all, really. So, let's kind of segue now into your personal golf journey.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you started golf shortly before you and I had met, months or maybe right at a year or
So
whatever.
like 2019 when I first got into it.
Okay.
So I think
Okay.
I think we met like 2019 summer, I want to say.
Yeah. May, June.
Yeah. So so I first got into it March. So that was a couple months getting into it. So
fresh.
The story of how I got into it. So my cousin who lives out in California, he was a college football player. He's in med device sales. He would always just go to the driving range at just Happy Gilmore. He could hit the ball about 350. I was joking around with him and call him DeChambeau because he could hit the ball far as can be. But he came out here and he was like, hey, is you guys got any like driving range? I was like, yeah, we got Crystal Springs right down the street, right? And he's like, do you got any clubs? And I'm like, oh, my father-in-law's got some like old custom Callaway ones, and he's like my height. So I'm like, oh, he's like, oh, they'll work for you. So we go down there, we get a bucket of balls, and I see him hitting them. He's bombing them. And I hit a couple, and I'm like, hitting them all over the place. And he gave me a couple pointers. He's like, turn here, go through, finish on your front leg. And I was like, I hit a couple. Boom. And some guy next to us was like, man, you're hitting that thing good. And so right after that, I was like, dude, what are the golf stores? He's like, Golf Galaxy. So I Googled it. Golf Galaxy. We go right there. We get a top flight set. They extend it like an inch and a half. And I'm playing with like regular flex for like the first couple months. And then when May hit, then I upgraded. I saw a set of Callaway Apexes, like the what were they from, like 2019 to 2020? 2018, 2019. And so I went there and I got them extended, so it was just better club, better, shaft, the whole bit, and started playing those and, went to Play It Again Sports, got some wedges before I really knew, and then played that for a couple of years and then went to Golf Galaxy, got a custom fit and, ended up with some Mizuno irons, the HMBs, the Callaway Jaws wedges, recently upgraded to the T24s, played a ping driver, played the TaylorMade mini driver, Cobra.
You hit that hybrid that I sold you for a little bit.
Yes, I did. So that's actually one of my boys right now, Johnny Hybrid.
Okay, good.
Johnny Hybrid, we call him. in Jersey, and he hits that thing about 300 yards. Barely hits the driver, but his hybrid he thumps. He's a former baseball player. He's tried to beat me many times. He's beat me like one time, but we used to have a big rivalry for every time we went to Arizona. We used to play Mountain Shadows, this par 3 course, and we played for a trophy. He beat me the first year. I beat him the next couple of years. So he's coming back for vengeance. We're going back in Arizona in February. So
Nice.
but that hybrid is still getting use from him. So shout out to Johnny Hybrid. But yeah, I love it, man. I'm addicted to golf. I go through so many drivers. Like I change clothes. Like I'll buy one from somebody and then sell it if I don't like it. So my golf closet is like my shoe closet. I got tons of everything. I got shaft flexes. I got this. I got a lab putter. I got a Scotty Cameron. I got everything, man. Some people, spend their money on this, that, and the other. My thing is golf, man. So that's what I look forward to. I'm a golf nerd too. So when
you're a sicko, man. You're a full blown golf sicko.
Oh, because I try to look at everything. Like okay, I try to know exactly why I'm doing something so I can fix it, right? Because you're a pro golfer, you go tournaments and all this stuff. When you're on the course, if you're not hitting the ball well and you don't know exactly why, how much harder that is if you're like, okay, my wrist at the top, it's a little cupped compared to if it's flat or bowed. Like, so that's why I try to figure out exactly what I'm doing. And usually, like, the better I've gotten at golf, like I got down to a 7 handicap like earlier this year, which is big for me to be in the single.
That's huge, Corey.
So now I'm about a 10. I've been slacking a little bit, with the job and all that. But once spring and summer comes, I want to get down to hopefully a 6 or maybe even a 5. But I think half the battle for me is just keeping the tee shots in play. Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes, like when I'm really focusing on being strategic and doing that, like I score well. But sometimes when I'm not, I'm trying to be like, oh, I got to figure out this driver no matter what. Right. If you're at a tournament, you're not hitting the driver well, you're going to go 3-wood, right? Or 2-iron. It's just all about being smart. And I think sometimes our ego gets in the way of us being the best we can at golf. And it's funny because some people say, oh, you're soft for putting the driver away. But I'm like, no, I'm smart.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm feeling it right now. So
that's right.
But yeah, I think golf is the hardest sport out there. Like, yeah, football is challenging and the physical aspect and all that. But there's never a sport where you'll see people crumble. I'm talking about crumble. Like if you look at PGA Tour, they'll be up for this many holes and they will all of a sudden crumble. They have an 8-shot lead, end up losing. Because I think the pressure, and you're just hitting a ball, right? That's at the end of the day, you're hitting a stationary ball. But it's one of the hardest things because, especially in golf, right? It's the opposite, right? You swing left, the ball goes right, you fade it, right? You swing to the right, especially as a righty, you're going to draw it, right? But a millimeter open or closed, that ball could be out of
25
bounds.
yards offline down 300 yards away.
It's like you're chasing perfection, but you can never do it. And that's what golf is summed up. I think it's like managing your misses. That's the best.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game. Yeah. It's who can miss the best, basically.
Correct.
Because every shot is not perfect. I mean, literally twice around, you'll hit a shot that was exactly as you intended it to be.
Yep.
How much of it, Corey, do you think in your own game, and then especially relating it to you playing a professional sport, is the reactionary aspect of it? In baseball, somebody throws a ball, you don't think, you react to it. Mm-hmm. Same thing when the ball is snapped, you don't think, you react to that left tackle or that right tackle and move. Golf is so mentally reliant, but you have to be able to disconnect that and play in a reactive state.
Exactly.
Yeah,
no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's all about routine, right? I'm sure you have a routine that you 100%. Do every time. And when your game is off, you're probably not doing that routine because you're thinking about something else or whatever. So I think the more you can do that routine, it turns your mind off. And in any sport, right? If you're thinking, you're wrong, right? You go before the shot and you're like, hey, I'm trying to hit a fade right here. You do your fade swing, you swing across your body down the line, right? And then you go up there, you do your same routine, boom, boom, your mind's off. And you just do that same practice swing. So when you're really rocking, and talk about that, like, from playing, competitive golf, like when you're really on, does it feel like it's just autopilot, right? You just feel like everything's kind of flowing with you?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, when if I'm going really low and I'm making a lot of birdies, then yeah, it's like it's autopilot, and it's almost like you can't. It's basically the zone, if you will. If you're playing golf and you're not making mistakes, meaning you're not making bogeys, but you're also making birdies, you're in the zone. But
Exactly.
if you go out and play around a golf where it's just you're making a bunch of pars, you may not be necessarily in the zone, but to your point is your routine is so ingrained that that's producing the consistency,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a little bit of both,
Yep.
but rarely do you play to your potential. I mean, what's your best score, Corey?
So my best score is a 79. That's the best score I
Okay.
ever had.
Okay, great. So talk to me about when you shot a 79. What
Yeah.
was that day like?
Yeah.
Did it feel like kind of effortless? Like because I would almost venture to bet that when you were out there, you didn't think one time about your wrist.
No.
You probably didn't think one time about swinging left or swinging right.
No.
You were probably going out there and looking at the hole in front of you and then reacting to what you had in front of you based off your muscle memory and what you knew was most likely to happen when you swung the club.
And I think that day also too, so we played Trump Bedminster, right, in New Jersey, where they've had a couple of those live golf tournaments. First time playing the course, we play from the tips, which is long, right? And to shoot a 79, for me, I think too, if you lower your expectations too, right? I think sometimes we have so much expectations.
Massive
like,
part
oh,
of
we
it.
need to do this, we need to do that. But I was like, whatever happens, I'm just out here having fun. And I think in any sport, right? Obviously, it has to be important to you, especially if you're competing or something like that in football and golf. But if we're just out there having fun, you're out there having fun, enjoying your sport, you're going to play well. Because I think that's the thing. You're not pressing. You're just out there having fun. And at the end of the day, it is a game, whether it's golf, whether it's football, whether it's a competition. At the end of the day, it is fun. You love the game, right? So why not let that show through? I think sometimes people get tight, they get stiff, and they're not themselves. So when you play loose, right, and you play like you have nothing to lose, hey, you're out there having fun. And that's what it was. I think it was like 13 out of 14 fairways with the driver. I was ripping 320 to 330 down the middle, hitting greens, two putting. I think I had one bogey, which for me is incredible. I had a bunch of birdies. But yeah, it was an incredible day, and it's something I'll never forget because I was like at this last hole, and all I needed to do was bogey it to break 80, and I'm like, okay, I go down there, I hit a bad shot, and I was like, you know what, I'll get up and down from there.
It's all good.
And ended up getting across the green, and then two putted, and then we came home with the 79, and it felt good to break 80 at a tough course, and it was a lot of fun. I broke 80 one more time, so I've consistently been like low 80s, right? 80, 81, 82.
Yeah.
But it feels good. It would be nice to be consistently in those high 70s, maybe even get to the mids. My goal one day is to be as close to scratch. That's a tough feat, I know it, but I know with time and just consistency, it'll come. But
you get there.
But yeah, golf is awesome. I'm glad I got into it. I used to think it was so stupid. I'm glad my cousin came out, changed my viewpoint on that, and he's the one that started the addiction. So my wife always blames him. So
yeah. No, man, I couldn't agree more with all that, Corey. So tell me, man, what do you love most about golf, and what do you dislike most? And along with that is if there was something you could change about the game, what would it be?
So what I like most is, regardless of how bad of a day you had beforehand or what's going on, it's kind of like your happy place, right? You can go and turn off, especially if it's after work hours and you're not getting any calls from anybody. But you can kind of unwind and just relax, right? You and the course, your friends, a couple of drinks if you want to, and you're just having fun, right? You're hitting some really great shots, hitting some bad shots, hitting in between, but you're having fun, you're competing. And I love the competition aspect, whether you're playing I don't play for big money by any means, but playing the different games, the Wolf, the Vegas.
Playing for something.
Correct. It's just, I love that competition. I think everybody, if you got blood pumping through you, you're competitive. If you're playing golf, you are competitive. And I love the fact that handicap makes it interesting, right? So me and you could play against each other. We could play against John Rahm. We could play against anybody just with the handicap index. So I think it creates a level playing field, and it makes it that much more interesting. So I just love the peacefulness of it, the relaxation, and I feel like it's just something that I genuinely just look forward to.
Yeah. what do you dislike? Is there anything about the game, the way the etiquette, maybe current traditions?
Yeah.
Is there anything that it happens or whatever, and you're like, oh man, I wish this wasn't that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when you look at like for the longest time they wouldn't allow people to wear like hoodies, and now you can wear hoodies. Like I'm like, listen,
Yeah,
if it's 40, 50 degrees or 40 degrees out, come on, like a little zip up or a jacket's going to be too heavy. So I kind of thought that was a little bit. I'm glad they got away from that, but I think sometimes
yeah,
with certain things about being too strict, and I understand like some clubs are different. Whitmore is a little bit more lax. Belle Reeve is a little bit more uptight.
yeah,
So. I kind of don't care, if it's that course's policy, I'll do whatever they want me to do. But I think sometimes, it is a little restricted. I understand about tucking in the shirt at a country club. I understand about that. But just with the hoodie thing for me for a while, I was like, really?
yeah. Come on.
Yeah. And then
Well, and
Rory did it that one weekend, and then everyone's like, oh, it's cool now. And that kind of
right,
started the trend.
yeah, for sure. No, that's a good point, man. I literally couple days ago when we did a podcast, my buddy and I were talking about that. We're like, hoodies were so like you couldn't wear a hoodie, but
Yeah.
now one time a tour guide does it and it's okay. And it's like, that should have been the okay all along.
Exactly.
You
And
know
I
what I
would say the
mean?
one other thing is certain country clubs, it's just a little stuffy. Like, sometimes like, they have so many rules about this. You need to take off
Yeah.
your hat. You need to do this. I'm like,
Don't
listen,
put your shoes on in the parking lot. Yeah.
correct. There's so many different things with that. And I'm like, that's why I joined Whitmore, honestly, because I wanted to avoid the stuffy country clubs, just because I'm like, I want to go to a place where I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells every 2 seconds. And I think that
Yeah.
sometimes where you go to some of these places, you're like, oh, is my etiquette okay? Am I messing things up? And I think I understand why certain things are in place. You don't want this to be a, romper room, out on the course, like some public courses are where people do it. But I think there should be less restrictions on certain things.
Yeah. I totally agree. Just quickly speaking of Whitmore, have you met Ray out there yet?
So
Ray Farnell?
I've talked to him a bunch because some of the guys I golf with, they know him pretty well. So you work with Harold Varner, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he worked with Ricky Barnes before that.
Okay.
So Harold, or not Harold, sorry, Ray, right around the time I was turning pro, he helped me a lot, just kind of preparing, giving me some insight. Hey, here's some kind of things you can expect. He's going to be on the podcast here in 2 weeks. So I'll
Nice.
actually be at Whitmore in a couple of weeks. But the reason I asked, I was just going to say, if you're out there, man, utilize him. He's obviously
Yeah.
a fantastic guy, and he's so kind and willing to help anybody that loves the game of golf get better. So that's all I
Definitely.
was going to say.
Yeah,
But,
I got one question for you. So what do you think there's something something that you learned, whether it was a technique or something to focus on during competition or tournaments that kind of changed things for you in a positive way?
when I was before I was a member at Whitmore, I was going to see Brian Fote, who's the swing instructor out at Belle Reeve. He's been the top instructor in Missouri for a long time. So I was out there seeing him, taking lessons, and he referred to me to read the book. I don't know if you've heard of Bob Rotell, the sports psychologist.
Yeah, yeah.
So he told me, he said, Cole, you need to read these books. And at the time, because when I learned golf, when I first started playing golf, I didn't have any coaches. I was self-taught. And then whenever I got to college and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to play pro golf. I want to get as good as I can get. I want to put everything into it, just like you said, all or nothing, right? So it was, let's find the coach who can help me the most. And when I did that, it started getting technical. It started getting into, okay, the swing needs to be a certain way. And then when he said, Cole, you need to read this book, because I'm an athletic guy. And he said in the book, Bob talks about you can have one swing thought, but preferably none, but you certainly cannot have more than one. And the reason for that is because you can't focus on more than one thing at a time anyways. And so whenever, and this has been 4 or 5 years ago now, it really changed my entire perspective on how I play the entire game of golf, which is I go out, I leave the range at the range, but the minute I step on the first tee, it's game time. I don't let myself think about one swing thought ever. I just go out and play. I just stick to my pre-shot routine and I react to the golf ball. And that has helped me immensely. I mean, it took me literally from a 1-2 handicap to a +4 in like a year and a half. And as you know, the better you get at something, while it seems not that far, the gap actually gets wider of how difficult it is. That is by far and away the best thing I could tell somebody is because golf is such a cerebral game. It is so mentally taxing, but it doesn't have to be. And if you can let yourself go out and just play, free and clear, and just react, I think it would do people a lot more good than it would to go out and say, oh, it's this, my swing is too flat, it's too steep, my hips aren't opening, my hips aren't closing, all this garbage. Like, none of that matters. There's a hole in front of you. It's a game, and you just got to play it and get the ball in the hole. And what your swing looks like doesn't matter. And they can't be any more true than what you see on tour. You have Matthew Wolff, who does
Scotty
this
Scheffler.
thing. Scotty Scheffler, the best golfer in the world by a landslide right
Jim
now.
Furyk,
Jim Furyk, Arnold Palmer. I mean, there's a lot of guys throughout every era of golf that exemplify that. So,
right? His swing is kind of weird. Yeah.
So allowing yourself to not get locked into swing thoughts and mechanics. Almost everybody I know outside of good golfers, pro golfers, most pro golfers don't do that. Don't get me wrong. There's outliers. There are a few pro golfers that are very technically oriented, but for the most part, none of them are. And the one thing that they'll all tell you is when they're playing their best golf, just like you said, just like I said, they aren't thinking about swing thoughts.
Exactly.
So why would you not try to reinforce that good habit every time you play?
Yep. Exactly.
That's what I would say.
So, question for you: What do you think the biggest thing for you that's holding you back from where you want to be? What do you think in your game? And
yeah, well, probably, honestly, driver. Probably. I mean, because I hit it far. Considering most guys, I'm over 300 yards off the tee, and you cannot give up strokes off the tee in professional golf, because the minute you hit one out of bounds, you're almost already just playing for a double bogey, and every stroke matters so much at the pro level. And you also can't succumb to just hitting an iron off the tee, because
length.
You can't let your health hit 4 and 5 iron into par 4s, because you're not going to make birdies, because you got to go low, right? So for me personally, I would say it's giving myself more opportunities for birdie off the tee, and not losing those 2 or 3 shots maybe per round because of driver. I would say, because for me personally, I mean, iron play, wedge play, and short game is my strengths for sure.
Have you ever thought about a mini driver? That's something I added to the bag this past year, and I feel like it's been really good for me. Like, I feel like distance wise is not too far off from the actual driver, and especially for some of the tight holes, or if your driver's not on, it's a lot more confident of a club. It's almost like a little bit bigger of a 3-wood for me. I don't know if you ever experimented or tried that.
I haven't, and the reason being is I hit my 3-wood not too far behind my driver.
Gotcha. So it's like what you need.
It's in 3-wood it seems silly, but obviously, so with a driver, it's a big fat club face, and
Correct.
so there's your freed up confidence, and just getting it out there under pressure is better than it is with a 3-wood, 5-wood, or an iron. And so, but to that point, because of that, knowing that driver, gets me in trouble occasionally, this last year and a half, I put a lot more effort into focusing on 3-wood tee balls, because for example, on, Corn Ferry Tour, the courses are a little bit shorter and easier. And so if there's doubt, it's okay. If I feel like driver's not rocking and rolling today, now I'm more confident than I was a year ago, just pulling out 3-wood and going that route. But maybe I should look into a mini driver and just test it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't done that.
Sometimes I've hit, at Whitmore, the mini driver 330, on some holes. Like it thumps. Like it's legit. And I would say consistently, like probably 280 to 300, somewhere around there. If it's a miss hit, 250, 260. But for me, I'm like all about just keeping it in play. And I really think you should experiment with it, especially if you have some of those driver troubles, just because, especially maybe at the 13.5 loft, just because then you do have some gapping, but you could still, you catch it clean. You can still hit it potentially close to what you're in your driver.
Okay. I will try that. I don't know. I'm a Titleist guy through and through, and that's who I've got to deal with. And so
it's hard for you. Do they have a mini driver? They have to.
I don't think they have a mini driver.
Isn't one of their GT3s like almost like a mini, or it's smaller head, like not quite Not quite a
There are
mini driver.
three. Yeah, there's three. They're,
Okay.
TSR3, GT3 is
Yeah.
a it's a smaller head, but
Okay.
I don't think it's like classified as like the mini,
Gotcha.
like what TaylorMade and Callaway have out there. But
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people
yeah,
have actually been playing it, put in their bags just for that
yeah.
option
Phil
because
Mickelson's a huge advocate of it.
yeah, I think a lot
Yeah,
of people get to. I think the most common club that people struggle with is usually always the driver. Even
yeah,
the good drivers of the golf ball are like, hey, sometimes I'm just in a slump. Brian Coe, who worked at Crystal Springs,
yeah,
played on some pro
yeah.
tours
Great
and stuff
golfer.
like that.
Yeah,
And he always told me, he's like, for a couple of years, I didn't use driver. I used through wood off the tee, every
yeah,
tee. And he's like, I just didn't feel confident with it. And I think everybody battles that driver
yeah.
issues, where you don't feel confident in it. But when you are confident in it, there's nothing like hitting the driver. I think that's the best club in the bag
That's a
to hit.
fact.
When you feel like hey, I started hitting a cut, and when I've really been on, I'm like, hey, aim a little bit left. You swing across that body line, and then it just peels right back into the middle. Starts out left
Yeah,
side of the rough, comes back to the middle. There's nothing like that feeling.
yeah. I'm the same way, man. For the longest time, I was always hitting a draw, and I worked the ball both ways confidently with my 3-wood and my irons. But driver, I don't even, unless, I mean, I absolutely have to hook the
Yeah,
golf ball. I hit a cut like 9.5 out of 10 times
yeah.
now. You know?
It's an easier shot to control. Because when
Yeah.
I first got into golf, you think, oh, high draws, bombs, right?
Bobs.
But the thing is, right, if you are setting up to hit a draw, if there's so much more likely to have a two-way miss, right, from a push or a snap hook. When you think about, especially trying to hit a cut, usually most of the time, if you miss either way, it's not as bad just because you're
Correct.
swinging across your body line. But,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to swing into out too much with an open club face or too far closed, you get yourself
Yeah.
in trouble with that two-way miss.
Yeah. But I think one thing that's kind of a little bit of a misconception is like you lose a ton of yardage with a cut. And you do if you hit a slice, but if you hit like a strong power cut,
Yeah.
I'm like maybe 10 yards less than a draw. And for the sake of it being in play and it's predictable, man, it's worth it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day in golf, most courses, unless you're playing one of those PGA style where it's like a 540 par four,
Yeah.
260 will get you there every time. So that's why the point being,
Yeah.
sometimes even amateur golf, you probably don't ever need a driver, really ever,
Yeah. No.
on most courses. Like if it's a par five, you can get there in three.
Yeah.
So I think most people, they want to hit the driver because everybody loves the big stick, but a lot
Yeah.
of times it'd probably be better if most people didn't carry. I've had some friends that don't carry drivers and they hit the ball pretty dang good.
Yeah. I did a video literally in the middle of this winter here in Columbia to kind of prove that point exactly, where I played 9 holes strictly with a 7-iron, and I only shot 4 over, and that's to show you that you don't have to hit it a long way to score. You know what I
Right.
mean? There's so many other parts of the game that carry much more
Yeah.
importance than just driving it far.
Why do you think Colin Morikawa is always consistently in tournaments? He's probably one of the weakest hitters, like driver distance
Oh,
wise, in
for sure.
in all of
It
golf.
don't matter.
But his wedge play, his iron play, his putting, his chipping is all the part. Get the ball in play, get anywhere from 260 to 280. Work on your irons and your wedges, right? Hit greens or close to. Work on your chipping and putting. Get up and down, and most of the time you'll be good. But I don't know. Everyone's enamored, and the Bryson effect. Even Rory
Yeah.
McIlroy got into that, right? For
Yeah.
being a top 5 hitter in all of golf. When Bryson came on and he was winning things, Rory said, dang, I got to do some more speed training. You're like, dude, you already hit the ball 330. What you need more for? Like, what's the
Yeah.
difference between 330 and 350? There really isn't any difference. So you could
Yeah.
almost argue that's like a disadvantage, right? Some of those in-between wedges, like you usually want to get to a full shot if you can, right? So I feel like, yeah, he messed up Rory's swing for a little bit when he's trying to
Yeah.
chase Bryson. So
He was pushing him for sure.
yeah, and I think everybody's so enamored with that, and it's fun to hit the ball far. Don't get me wrong. I think that's what scrambles are for. But yeah, it's hard sometimes to turn off that mentality to be like, I want to swing hard, right? Because at the end of the day, my best rounds, it's all about tempo.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, Corey, and golf is unfortunately a huge ego game, man. And the best golfers just don't have that because they don't care.
Yeah,
What they care about is I'd rather hit 14 fairways and 18 greens
yeah,
than drive at 350 and hit 2 fairways and hit out of the
correct.
rough every time. And then when I hit out of the rough, now I'm missing every green and now I'm having to get up and down. You don't chip it that close most of the time. So now you're making bogeys. Like There's course management is a very underrated aspect of playing good golf. And I would say maybe for somebody like you shot 79 a couple times now, but I'm also willing to bet that like a 92 or a 93 creeps into your game every now and again.
Yeah.
And that right there is a product of poor course management, most likely.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. Like getting yourself in trouble, right? Having to re-tee, hit 3 off the tee. And it's like, sometimes if you just, focused on, what's going to give you the best second shot and in play, right? It's all about just minimizing your risk. And I think that's something that people don't think about. I just want to hit the ball far. But then you're like, I hit it far, but now I'm 30 yards away. It's a tough distance, right, to feel.
Right.
But if I'm 90 yards away, right, I can hit a full 60. Or I'm 110, right, I can hit a full 56. So I think it's all about, just managing that. And this is a good point you brought up because I played last and I'm like, doing okay, high 80s. And I'm like, damn, I just really didn't think about course management at all. And that's key. I think if you just, the more consistent you want to be, it's all about like choosing what shots and being selective about what you hit as opposed to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Corey, I want to ask you just a couple more questions, man, more so for the people out there listening and watching, and myself too, that I've these same questions have come into my head. So first off is, how do you deal with pressure moments, in your professional career? What did that look like for you?
I think the more you prepare yourself, the easier that gets. And I'm sure you probably have run into the same situations. I think that's why we all practice, for moments like that, right? The harder you practice, the more you get yourself in situations that you're going to encounter in a game. And so let's just say, hey, I know that I didn't play this run play well, or I didn't go well against this type of blocker. I would try to get that guy against me in the game and in practice, right? So way in the game, I could be that much better. So I think it's putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions in practice, getting yourself, in not great situations to then, because I always thought like the harder practice is, as crazy as it seems, especially at the NFL, it'd be like, you guys don't practice. But I'm like, hey, the harder practice is, or the harder you work in practice, the easier it is in the game. And I truly believe that, right? The way you run to the ball, the effort, the conditioning, I think it all ties in. So I think the way you prepare yourself every day. And for me, I was always a grinder, right? I would always get up early, work out twice a day in the off season, eat right, do this regimented. I think the more you do that and the more you harden yourself, mentally, physically, the easier everything's going to be in the long run. And I think I look at like somebody like Tiger Woods and you play golf. The way his dad, his dad was a lot of things, but I think his dad prepared him well for competition because he used to walk in front of his lines. He would chirp in his backswing. He'd put a horn out there. He did all the things that you're not supposed to do. And he said, if you can play well with this, you can do anything. And I think that's the same thing with any sport. The harder you make it for yourself, right? Like I know sometimes a lot of pros, I don't know if you do this too, they play 2 balls, they hit the worst ball, right? Yeah. So they put themselves in bad situations. How do you get out of it? Because you want to work all those crazy, uncomfortable situations because during the actual match, you're going to be like, oh, shoot, okay, this is a lot easier. So I think that's why a lot of people do that. But I think that's something, the way you prepare always sets you up for success.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's absolutely great. What was the hardest part for you in becoming a pro athlete? Obviously, it sounds like I don't think late bloomer is the right term, but to some degree, there were some guys at your high school you were playing with that were ahead of you to some degree, but that didn't slow you down. What was the hardest part for you in becoming a pro athlete?
I think just the so everyone thinks that was built overnight. So when I first came to college, I didn't play much defensive end in high school. I played a couple games here or there. Most of my offers were for tight end, right? A blocking tight end to move me to an offensive tackle eventually, like probably left tackle. So a lot of people don't know that. So I was kind of raw at defensive end. And so my freshman year, I came into training camp and nobody had any expectations because in football, if you're a highly touted recruit, they'll send you to summer school. They'll get you ready with all the guys there, take a class because they think you're going to play. So they want you to get you ingrained in everything, the routine. So they didn't ask me to go to summer school because they had no expectations. So when I come to training camp, I come in and since I last checked in with them, like in the spring, I had grown a few inches, put on a bunch of pounds, and they were like, who's this guy? And they were kind of surprised at like how much I've matured in a short time. So came in there, started working hard. I was like last string, just kept showing up, kept doing great things in different drills and 11 on 11 stuff. Kept working my way on there. I beat our Wildcat, which is our biggest, strongest athlete. That was an offensive lineman that played in the NFL for a while. We did a board drill, and I beat him multiple times, and everybody was just like so surprised by that. I just kept building momentum, kept putting my head in the dirt, and kept working hard, and good things started to pay off. So I started my first couple of games as a freshman, and I don't know if it still is, but I think I had the record for most career starts at Northwestern. But it's something. I think people think about it like success is built overnight when it's not, right? It's a constant
long process.
It's a long process. It's constant build up for it. It's the ups and downs, right? Sometimes you take 2 steps back to go a step forward, and I think people don't realize everything that comes from it. And sometimes people get in their heads, and I've had this happen too, where I get in my head about something and it's stunted my growth in one aspect of my life. And I think the thing is, you always have to trust yourself, be confident in yourself, but understand that you're going to fail. And failure is not a bad thing. I think we associate failure with being this terrible thing, but I think you grow so much when you fail and you learn. And I think you realize that probably from some of the things you've done as well, that some of my failures resulted in big successes after that because I learned so much from that. And I think that's a valuable lesson. And you have kids, I have kids too. And, I always tell them that, hey, when you fail at something, it's not a bad thing. Don't look at that, right? It's a learning lesson. And I think anything in life is a learning lesson. I think sometimes in this day and age, we are too negative with ourselves and we want success overnight because what do we see? We see Instagram. We see all this thing, the lavish lifestyle, the cars, how much money somebody's making. That doesn't define you. I think the person you are, your heart, how you treat others, and obviously, if you work hard and you're determined at something, you can accomplish whatever you want. So anybody tuning in that, maybe is going through a tough time where they don't think they can make it to the other side, you can. Just trust the process. This is going to help you grow as a person, and you're going to make it to the other side. Because there's always, if there's a will, there's a way. There's always a way to get around your obstacle. So I'm a firm believer in that. Just trust and believe in yourself. Work hard. Ask for help when you need it. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. And I think as humans, we need to pick each other up, right? Not degrade each other, not talk bad about people. Because I think the great part about life is the human interaction. And sometimes we got lost because of this right here, right? We're all texting and, the thing is, what we're doing right now, I think people need to do more of. Have a conversation. So I think that's something that you can't replace with a phone. It may be easier, but you can't replace this human interaction.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Corey. I think that's a wonderful sentiment there. The adversity aspect of what you were talking about that's a necessity for becoming good or great at anything, because everybody fails at something, but your ability to react to that in a way that is going to propel you forward is what matters a lot more.
Exactly. Like there's one or two ways you go when you get hit with adversity, right? You either go in your turtle shell or you bow up and you say, "Yep, let's bring it, baby." Right?
That's right.
So there's one or two ways: fight or flight, right? The adrenaline response. There's one or two ways you're gonna face things, and I think the thing is, right? Sometimes we can't all do it alone, like I was saying. Sometimes you need help. Sometimes you need people to be in your corner. So, I think if you got somebody important, special in your life that you can rely on and talk to and be a sounding board and a mentor to you, do it, right? I'm sure you have people in the golf industry that are mentors to you. I had football players that were mentors to me, business partners that are mentors to me. So don't try to be the smartest guy in the room. I think you want to surround yourself with the smartest guys in the room, because I think that just only elevates you as a person.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree, Corey. Last question for you, brother. Again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this with me. What advice would you give to somebody that's pursuing an unrealistic or lofty goal, knowing that most people are gonna, as you said, they're gonna be negative. They're not gonna, they're not gonna like watching you work for something.
I think the thing is, right, you always have to block out those people, right? So you block them out, but at the same time, you keep that in your memory bank, right? So you keep that, you keep that on your shoulder right there, and you use that to say, yep, they don't think I can do it. And I think that at the end of the day, what I was saying before is having that confidence, having that trust in yourself that no matter what, you're going to find a way to get it done. And I truly believe, like, if you're not setting lofty goals and expectations, or people are like, well, yeah, right, bro, you can't do that. What are you doing, right? What are we doing here? If you don't want to be the best, right? If you don't want to be the best at golf, what are you doing, right? If I don't want to be the best at my sales job now, what the heck am I doing? So I think it's being confident in yourself, not being too cocky, but just being confident in your ability and just trusting the process, right? Yeah, you want this highly lofty goal. It's not going to happen overnight. So, right, it could happen 3 years from now, 5 years from now, but just give it everything you had, right? Just every day when you go to sleep, you look in the mirror, you say, I gave it my all that day. I feel confident in that. I think if you can continue to stack days that you feel like that, not everybody's going to have a perfect day, right? That's just how it is. But if you gave it your all every day that you're out there, especially when you're in a sport, hey, that you're not going to have the best swing some days, but you're going to work through it, right? Yeah. You're going to work a little bit more on that short game. You're going to look more on that chipping, that putting. So I think the more you work, the better your results are going to be. And sometimes the luckier you get. A lot of winning golf is luck. A lot of winning anything, right? Sometimes you just need a break. Like I look at Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, that game against the Bears, where that Bears defensive back was talking to the crowd, right? Think about for the Commanders, like how that changed their season and changed the Bears season, right? Changed the Bears for the worse. They were on top of the world. They were 4-2, about to go 5-2. They're one of the leaders in the NFC North. They're ready to go, and Jaden Daniels and them are trying to figure their way out. And after that allowed them to do what they're doing right now. So I think it's you can go one or two ways, right? And you just can't let the bad times get the best of you. The good times you enjoy, but flush it and move on to the next one, right? Never get too high, never get too low, and use everything as a learning experience. And I think the thing is, people are always going to tell you can't do something. That's just how it is. People are haters. That's how they are innately born. They don't want to trust in everything. They don't want to believe anybody can do something, right? Look at Tiger Woods, that interview he had with that one pro golfer, where he said, yeah, sometimes second or third is good. He's like, well, that's not how I roll. He's like, you'll learn.
Yeah, you'll learn.
He had to eat his words after that. But I think that's the one thing when I look at people, like I look at Tiger Woods, I look at Michael Jordan, I look at Kobe Bryant, right? How they were, that Mamba mentality, that mentality where you were going to find a way to get it done no matter what. And I think you could, some people thought they were a-holes. Some people thought they were this. But at the end of the day, you knew if you had them on your team, you were going to have a shot to win. And I think ultimately, that's what most people respect about them. They say, hey, man, I hated playing with him, but I'll tell you what, he brought the best out of me. Sometimes I want to fight him, but he brought the best out of me. And I think surround yourself with people like that are going to make you better.
Yeah, absolutely. Corey, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you again so much, like I said, for taking the time to do this. I can't wait for me and you to get out there and play here this spring. Maybe we can get together a couple times. Like I said, I get out to Whitmore all the time. I didn't know you remember there, so we'll get out there and knock it around.
So you live in Columbia, Missouri, right by?
I live in Boonville, actually, which is west of Columbia, 20 minutes. My wife has got a small store here, but we're actually planning to move back to St. Louis here in the next couple of years. Open up a second location there in Main Street, St. Charles. And
hopefully you'll join over at Whitmore over there.
That I will. I'll get right back there for sure.
Exactly, man. Well, appreciate you having me on, man. If you ever want me on again, well, maybe during the season we could talk a little bit about these Bears Packers and how the Bears are going to be champions this year.
We'll see. All right, everybody. Like, subscribe, comment. We'll see you in the next one.